Hi, my name is Kristen and this is Kristen Craves Books. It's once again time to talk about new releases. We're already getting to fall releases. I love this time of year for book releases because it's when all of the new horror comes out, all the gothic fiction. If you didn't watch my last video, how dare you? But also you wouldn't know that I am co-hosting the romance readathon in September and the theme is Phantom of the Opera. And one way to get points is to read gothic books, and that is just like my bread and butter. And there are so many good ones coming out in September, so we'll talk about those. A few of them will probably be in my TBR, so you'll hear me talk about them a few more times in my next few videos, but I'm really excited about them. There's some really exciting titles coming out in September and ones that I had been anticipating all year long. So let's get into it, lots to talk about. And again, I will link any pre-orders that I find down below. So starting with September 3rd, the first one is called This Monstrous Kind, and it is by Lydia Gregovich, and it is a gothic Sense and Sensibility retelling. So what else do I need to hear? Obviously, you know this, if you've been around the channel. Anything Jane Austen inspired. Now I'm basic and Pride and Prejudice retellings are my favorite, but I do enjoy a Sense and Sensibility one as well. We just don't get them as much, and I do think that that story lends itself to being a little bit more gothic, so I'm curious to see what the author does with it. No denying that this cover is absolutely stunning. This is actually a romantasy, and it follows two sisters who have to inherit this manor, and they have to work together to protect it from incoming dangers and monsters. And there's a fog that has encroached all of England, and our main character is immune to that. But there are fires that protect the family manor, and those are kind of burning out, and the fog's getting closer, and there are these monsters that are actually called phantoms, so perfect for the readathon, that are coming to attack her. I think she has to seek the help of somebody who maybe is a bit of an enemy when her sister goes missing. So I'm just really hopeful about that one. Again, if you know anything about Sense and Sensibility, I do think that'll follow some of the story beats for that, but obviously very unique with the whole phantom thing. I have been hearing good things, so can't wait to read that one. It'll be perfect for that readathon. There's a pre-order incentive for this one. I think it's for a specific bookstore. I will leave the link down below, but you get this art print, and it definitely is giving all the gothic vibes that I'm expecting from this book. Andoral Dark by Tigis Girma is actually one that I have an ALC of from Libro FM. So in theory, I could get to it before September 3rd, its release date. Maybe I'll start at September 1st because it's just too perfect for this readathon. And when I saw it was one of the ALCs for the month, I wanted to jump in, but I also really want to save it. I've seen rave reviews for this already from people who also had access to it. And this is actually being described as a romantic dark academia fantasy, buzzword, 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 and there are vampires. And like this year, I really want to lean into my love of vampires in the fall. And this seems to be doing something unique with the whole dark academia thing. Again, very, very fall. The world in this one seems really unique. So in order for humans to gain power, they have to bond to a vampire, and our main character is orphaned. She is kind of like a lost heiress, and her sister is kidnapped, and she thinks that the vampire that is bound to her family is responsible. So she has to infiltrate like this arcane society, attend this school where humans are trained to be able to live in peace with vampires, and that's where this vampire that she suspects is. And I think they have a romance. So yeah, it's gonna be messy. There's gonna be drama. I love a school setting. I love vampires. Been hearing incredible things about this one, so my hopes are high for that one for sure. There are no pre-order incentives that I could find for this one, but the first edition printing is like a special edition with edges, and the edges say no soul can enter without an invitation. Really pretty. I love that we're getting more and more of these special first editions, so if I find them and come across them, I will let you know that those exist as well when I do these videos. Andrew Joseph White has a new book coming out. This is called Compound Fracture, and I've heard so many good things about this author, and I just need to read something. I think this one sounds really interesting. It's set in the Appalachian, which seems to be a setting that really works for me in horror. I've read a few books like that, and they always seem to hit. It says that it's a gut-wrenching story following a trans autistic teen who survives an attempted murder only to be drawn into the generational struggle between the rural poor and those who exploit them. So our main character is Miles. He goes to this party and he is carrying evidence. I think it's like photo evidence of something that the town's sheriff has done. The sheriff was responsible for an accident that injured Miles's father and killed some others. And while at this party, the sheriff's son discovers he has this evidence, and he and his friends brutally beat Miles. but Miles survives and is in the hospital and is being kind of haunted by a ghost covered in soot, because the feud between Miles and the sheriff's family goes back hundreds of years. There was an uprising with the miners in the community, and it ended up with somebody being murdered by the police. So there's a lot of generational trauma and a feud that's been passed down through the generations happening in this town, and Miles is now at the center of it. I'm not sure if it's been announced. It'll probably be announced soon, at least on Becky's channel. Becky from Bex Reads, who created the Black Hat Book Coven that I'm a part of, where we read witchy books every month. But this book comes out in September, and it is going to be our book in September. I will be hosting the live discussion of it. So if you want to join us, here's your chance to pre-order the book or get on the library hold or just get prepared for it. But the book that I chose, I don't think you're going to be surprised by, because it's cozy, it's witchy, it's very me, is The Cottage Around the Corner. This is by D.L. Soria, and apparently it is romance between a feisty witch and a powerful mage, and it's giving like Gilmore Girls with You've Got Mail. They have rival businesses. She has a small spell shop, and he's opened a more like luxurious store of some kind revolving around magic. But there is a supernatural force that is threatening the small town that they live in, hence the Gilmore Girls thing, and they have to put their differences aside and work together and save the community. I mean, it's not that unique of a premise, but it's one that always seems to work for me. And amongst all of the gothic reads and all the vampire stuff, I think I'm gonna need a few cozies. So I'm really excited to read that one with you all in September and discuss it on my channel at the end of the month. Moving on to September 10th, we have a new book coming from Rachel Harrison, who I know so many of you love and have recommended to me, and I know I'm gonna love, and I'm just depriving myself of that joy. You know how that goes. All of her books are on my TBR. I always think her books sound amazing. This one in particular, because the cover's so cool and it's vampires. This one is called So Thirsty. You cannot deny that everything about this cover is amazing. It says a woman must learn to take life by the throat after a night out that leads to irrevocable changes in this juicy, thrilling novel. This book follows Sloane, who is going through some difficulties with her marriage. I think that her husband is cheating on her, and she goes away for the weekend with her best friend. And her best friend wants her to come out of her comfort zone and enjoy life a little bit more, so she plans this night out for them with these mysterious strangers, and something happens and the night goes terribly wrong and changes the trajectory of their entire lives. So I'm guessing there's vampires involved in this night. I'm curious to see if it's just a story that takes place over one night. I feel like those books either really work for me or really, really don't, but I know so many people love Rachel Harrison, so I'm curious to see what she does with it. I'm hoping it's a little bit more campy. I love when vampire stories have a little bit of campiness to them, and I don't know what to expect from Rachel Harrison, but I feel like she kind of leans into that a little bit. Let me know if you have a favorite book by her, which one to start with, but I'm really drawn to this one. Then we have a YA horror called Old Wounds. This is by Logan Ashley Kisner, and it says that Ava and Max are two trans kids who are trying to get to California. Max is desperate to finally be able to transition, and Erin is longing to understand why she's on a trip to begin with, after Max suddenly broke up with her 2 years earlier. So is it a second chance romance? We will see about that. I wonder if there's a romance within all of this horror. So the two of them are obviously on a road trip to California. They end up getting stranded and separated in the woods in a rural community, and there is a legend that there is some kind of monster within these woods who takes girls as sacrifices, like feeds off them and stuff, and the people within the town are looking for somebody, a female sacrifice. So they're also being hunted by the people within this community, and I'm assuming they end up working through their differences in order to save each other. But yeah, sounds interesting. I love a good YA horror. And that is it for September 10th. Not the biggest release day. I thought I would have found a few more for that, so if I'm missing any for September 10th, let me know. But moving on to September 17th, the first one is one that I feel like I talked about in my most anticipated books of the year. I feel like I've had my eye on this book for ages. I think it's going to be in a few subscription boxes and things like that. This is A Dark and Drowning Tide by Alison Saft. It says that a sharp-tongued folklorist must pair up with her academic rival to solve their mentor's murder. So it's a sapphic fantasy romance that has gothic vibes. Perfect. This is what I need for September. And the two of them are on this expedition to discover this magical spring that is part of legends, and the king has hired them to find it so that he can harness its power and reign for a long time, and they each have their own motives for being on this expedition. And obviously they're on a ship, and their mentor and the captain of the ship, or the leader of the expedition, is murdered. And obviously their mentor must have been killed by somebody aboard the ship, and everybody has their own motivations for why they would want to kill this person. So the two of them are academic rivals, but they trust each other. They know that they wouldn't have murdered their mentor, so they work together to figure out who did it while also completing the expedition. And I love what it says in terms of the things they come across. It says that there are other dangers lurking in the dark, forests that rearrange themselves at night, rivers with slumbering dragons waiting beneath the water, and shape-shifting beasts out for blood. So we're getting a lot of mythical creatures amongst the sapphic romance and this murder mystery. So a lot of layers to this story, and I'm hoping it's good. And there are a few great pre-order incentives for this one. You get an art print if you order from a independent bookstore. It's like an add-on. Then there is the standard pre-order incentive. I think it's a couple art prints and some stickers and stuff. I love whoever does the illustrations for these. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. I need to start looking into seeing the artists for these art prints that always come out for these pre-order intensives, because they're always beautiful and the artists deserve the credit. So if I can figure that out, I will link the artists' Instagrams and all that stuff as well. We're getting a sequel to My Roommate is a Vampire by Jenna Levine. Now this is a book that came out, I think it was last year. I read and loved. The reviews are mixed on that one. I think you kind of have to just go into that book expecting it to be a silly, goofy time and accept it for what it is, and I ate it up. I thought it was amazing. And I'm excited that we're getting a sequel because the hero in this one was in the first book, and he's kind of hilarious and ridiculous. So this is My Vampire Plus One. It is a fake dating romance, and it is centered around a wedding. So many buzzwords for me, some of my favorite tropes. And obviously the hero is a vampire. The heroine in this case is attending a wedding, and all of her family, they're always on her case that she needs to get married. Why isn't she dating somebody? You know how that goes. So she decides that she's gonna bring the worst person that she knows so that her family think that she has terrible taste and kind of leave her alone and stop asking questions about it. So she brings Reginald, who is our vampire character, and he goes to the wedding. It's an absolute disaster, works out perfectly for her, and through the course of the night, somehow he tells her that he's a vampire, which seems like a mistake, but she's all for it. Just gotta go along with it. And she decides that she's gonna continue bringing him to family events because it's really turning off her family from asking her questions about it. And obviously they end up falling in love, and I love that Reginald's kind of a mess and a disaster, and I'm curious to see how that connection forms between them. And I just hope it's funny. The first one was funny. There was TikTok involved. It was absolutely ridiculous, but I ate it up. It was exactly what I needed in the moment, and I have a feeling I'll need it again this year, so I just cannot wait for that to finally come out. Then we have a new book by Brom, and I do have the ebook for this. I need to get to that. It is on my August TBR. My August reading hasn't been going too great, so I need to get to that. I need to just pull out my Kindle. It is definitely looking like fall out there now. I'm in a hoodie. It's windy as we speak. I'm sure I'm gonna get another thunderstorm, so maybe I just need to get into it a little bit earlier. And this book is called Evil in Me, and there are, I think it said almost a dozen paintings by Brom, and I think that's where Brom really excels. I love the artwork in Slewfoot, so I'm really curious to see what it looks like in this book. And if you can't tell by the cover of this one, like the psychedelic vibes, this is centered around rock and roll. It is a novel of possession, damnation, and rock and roll, where one woman must get the world singing in order to save her soul. It sounds absolutely ridiculous, but could be fun. Our main character, Ruby, was part of a band that broke up, had a lot of drama. She goes over to her neighbor's house, and he has some kind of ancient relic, and she gets possessed by a demon through this ring, and she has to get the band back together in order to save herself. Don't know how that all plays out, but I think it could be a good time. I've only read Slewfoot by Brom, but it's one of my favorites, and I think that even just for the artwork alone, this will be interesting to read. So I haven't seen any early reviews of that one really, so let me know if you've had access to that one and read it yet. But it does sound different. I'm wondering if it's going to be as dark as Slewfoot was, because with that premise you think it would be a little bit more fun, more like Grady Hendrix kind of horror. So I'm curious to see what direction this one takes and how much it leans into like the campiness I said that I like in some of my horror, but we will see. I think I'll be surprised by that one either way. I feel like Alexis Henderson is like the queen of fall releases, although I have yet to read anything by her, but people seem to love her stuff. I feel like her stuff always comes out this time of year and it really just has that fall feeling, and this one is definitely no exception. It's giving dark academia. It's called An Academy for Liars, and it says that a student will find that the hardest lessons sometimes come outside of the classroom. Our main character, Lennon, has this innate power of persuasion. She can control will and she can control people, and in some cases even matter, and she's invited to take the entrance exam to be enrolled in this magic school that is hidden, and obviously she passes and she enrolls, and we follow her as she learns to develop her powers even more and what that means for her. And I think she ends up having a romance with her advisor Dante, and it says as Lennon continues in her studies, her control grows and she starts to uncover more about the secret world that she has entered into, including the disquieting history of Drayton College and the way her mentor's tragic and violent past intertwines with it. She is increasingly disturbed by what she learns, for it seems that the ultimate test is to embrace absolute power without succumbing to corruption, and it's a test she's terrified she's going to fail. Richard Osman has a new book coming out, which is really exciting. Obviously, Richard Osman wrote the Thursday Murder Club series, which I've only read the first 2 books of, and I keep telling myself I need to continue with it. That was my goal for 2024 because I liked that series quite a bit. I just haven't been in a mystery, contemporary mystery mood really, but this one looks really good. There's a cat on the cover, so obviously I'm gonna be drawn to it. I think I saw the Waterstone edition that has cats all over the end pages. Easy way to win me over. This one is called We Solve Murders, and it's a new series. It says an iconic new detective duo and a puzzling new murder to solve. So it follows Steve and Amy. And Steve is enjoying the retired life. So obviously Richard Osman likes to write older characters, which I appreciate. He does odd bit of investigation work, but he prefers his familiar habits and routines, the pub quiz, his favorite bench, his cat waiting for him when he comes home. His days of adventure are over. Adrenaline is daughter-in-law Amy's business now. So Amy is his daughter-in-law and she is the other character, which I love that too. Amy Wheeler thinks adrenaline is good for the soul. As a private security officer, she doesn't stay still long enough for habits or routine. She's currently on a remote island keeping world's famous author alive, which was meant to be an easy job. Then a dead body, a bag of money, and a killer with their sights on Amy have her sending an SOS to the only person she trusts. A breakneck race around the world begins, but can Amy and Steve stay one step ahead of a lethal enemy? And so I think they're gonna have a really sweet dynamic. A father-in-law and a daughter-in-law solving a crime together. I think that's gonna be really sweet. Another one that is just so me, and I almost wanted to pick it for the Black Hat Book Coven, but I thought it came out too late for us to read it in September, but definitely one on my radar is ReWitched, and this is by Lucy Jane Wood. And the tagline says, believing in yourself is its own kind of magic. There's a cat on the cover, witchy vibes. Belladonna Blackthorn hasn't lost her magical spark, but she hasn't seen it in a while either. Our main character, Belle, works in a bookstore, as witches tend to do, but she's hiding the fact that she's a witch, and then on her 30th birthday, she is summoned to this witch trial, and her magical abilities are put at risk. She has a month to fix things, but dark forces are preventing her from being able to do so. I think she has a romance with like a watchman or something, and it says that with found family, slow burn romance, and an uplifting message about self-love, this is the cozy autumnal read that you've been waiting for. So much like The Cottage Around the Corner, it just sounds sweet to me. I won't go too much into this one because I haven't even read the first book yet, but I didn't realize that this book was even coming out. I don't see people talking about it as much. But the sequel to Spice Road, which has been on my TBR, I have the gorgeous Fairy Loot edition. I think I'm gonna love it. Haven't read it. But the sequel to that comes out in September and it's called Serpent. Love the cover. I don't know, have I seen what Fairy Loot is doing with that one yet? I'll have to look that up. I'm sure you've already passed the window to order it, but I'm curious to see how pretty it is because I really liked what they did with the first one. So if you read the first one, just so you know, the sequel does come out soon. September 24th, one that I cannot wait for. We're getting a new Erin A. Craig, who is like the queen of fall reads for me. I love the atmosphere that she's able to create, and I feel like even just looking at this cover tells you you're gonna get that atmosphere from it, and I'm just so excited. This is called The 13th Child, and it says, and this is the story of Hazel, a young healer navigating a ruthless court to save the life of the king, grappling with a pantheon of gods with questionable agendas as she fights for agency and true love in her own life as a goddaughter of none other than Death himself. all gifts come with a price. So very different from what I don't really expect from this author, but I'm intrigued to see what she does with it. It definitely seems to lead more into fantasy than I first imagined, but yeah, I'm definitely curious about the gods and all that stuff, so I still think I'm gonna love it. It's actually a fairy tale retelling that asks the question, what does a life well lived mean, and how do we justify the impossible choices we make for the ones we love? Really fun pre-order incentive for that one. I think you can get tapered candles, a bookmark, some recipes and everything, so I'll link that down below. I love the touch of that. I'm curious if that is in limited quantities, because that tends to be the case when you're getting things like candles, but try the link down below and we'll see if you can get your hands on some of those. I wish this book came out in the summer because I feel like I associate this series with the summertime, but maybe that's just me. But the third book in this series from N.G. Peltier is coming out, and this one is called The DAT and Countdown. This is obviously a contemporary romance. It is sapphic and it is second chance. So these two women dated or hooked up when they were in high school, but it's kind of like the one that got away. Maxine went on to get married, and now she is divorced and moving back to the island where they first connected. And Remy is really hoping that they will pick up where they left off, and they go on these dates, and it's friends to lovers, and I think that the setting is gonna be really great, but I do wish that it was in the summertime. But still, I really like N.G. Peltier's writing and what she does with her romances, so I've been waiting for this one and I'm excited about it. We're getting a new anthology that's edited by Zoraida Cordova, who's one of my favorites. We've had a few in this series. I've yet to read any, but this one has fae. There's fairies, so that'll probably intrigue a lot of us. And this one is called Fairies Never Lie, and there are a lot of great authors in this. Obviously, Zoraida Cordova and Natalie C. Parker are the editors of this one, but Chloe Gong's in it, Holly Black, Danielle Clayton, a lot of names I recognize, Ryan LaSala, Anna Marie McLaurin, one of my favorites, Rory Power, so an interesting mix here. So this is a collection of 14 stories that all center around fae with different genders and from different cultures, and I just like the whole project of this series. We've had a vampire one in the past and mermaids, I think, so I just like the whole idea of these, even if I haven't read them yet. I have to be in the mood for short stories, but if that mood strikes, this is probably something I would turn to. I saw this cover and it just screamed like horror to me, and the kind of horror that you want to pick up in the fall, so I checked it out. I think that this synopsis sounds really interesting. It's called Sleep Tight by J.H. Markert, and apparently it follows the sole survivor of a serial killer who might hold the key to stopping a new killing spree from happening. So what really got me was the serial killer in this one. His name is Father Silence, which is chilling. And it says, Father Silence once terrorized the rural town of Twisted Tree, disguising himself as a priest to prey on the most vulnerable members of society. When the police finally found his house of horrors, they uncovered 19 bodies and one survivor, a boy now locked away in a hospital for the criminally insane. Now, 2 decades later, Father Silence is finally put to death, but the next morning, the detective who made the original arrest is found dead. A new serial killer is taking credit for the murder and calling himself the outcast. And obviously the story plays from there. I don't think that this is that new of a concept where you have like the final girl kind of trope and a copycat killer, but that setup always seems to work and is very terrifying. So if it does something new and interesting, I'll be curious to see, but let me know if that's on your radar. I'll have to check out a few reviews for that one, but I am definitely intrigued by it, and the whole Father Silence thing creeps me out, just the thought of it. Then I have a dragon book for you. It's called A Fire in the Sky by Sophie Jordan. And it says that dragons are extinct, witches are outcast, magic is dying, but humans' lust for power is immortal. So, dragons and witches. Our main character is Tasman, and she is raised around the princesses within the royal court, but she has the duty of being punished for their misdeeds, so she is always looked down upon. But her only friend is the captain of the guard, and I think they have some feelings for each other. But I have a feeling that this is a bit of a love triangle, because it says when Fel, the beast of the borderlands, descends on her home, Tasman's world becomes even more dangerous. To save the pampered princesses from a fate worse than death, she is commanded to don a veil and marry the brutal warrior. She agrees to the deception even though it means leaving Stig and the only life she's ever known behind. The wedding night begins with unexpected passion and ends in near violence when her trickery is exposed. So I'm curious to see where this goes, but we know that the best friend never wins the love interest over. It's always like the more bad boy type, never the cinnamon roll. I think we can predict how this one all plays out, but I'm still curious, and there's dragons, so I will definitely give that one a try. It says magic is not dead, it is only sleeping, and it will take one ordinary girl with an extraordinary destiny to awaken it. And last but not least, we're getting a novella from ML Rio, who wrote If We Were Villains, and that became like such a sensation, and I feel like she hasn't written anything since, or nothing that I have really heard of or became popular for as well loved as that book is. So this is exciting to see that we're getting something new from her. So it is a story about a ragtag group of night shift workers who meet in the local cemetery to unearth the secrets lurking in an open grave. And I think that's all you need to know, because it's novella, and I think I've heard that it all takes place over the course of one night. And you know what? A cemetery, always an interesting setting. And I think we learned from If We Were Villains that she's really good at writing like this ensemble cast, really getting you invested in the characters and having complicated dynamics between them. So I'm hopeful we'll get that in this one, even though it is definitely way shorter than If We Were Villains. But those are all the books on my radar for September. Let me know if I missed any. Let me know if you saw any pre-order incentives that I may have missed as well. I cannot wait to get to all these, to participate and co-host in the romance readathon and read all the gothic books that my heart desires, and these new releases as well. So I'll talk to you soon. Thanks again for your support. Bye for now.